You smell it before you see anything. Iron. Shit. Something sweet underneath that makes your stomach fold in on itself. The fog breaks and you wish it hadn't. Bodies, not scattered, not dumped, arranged. Miles of them. A corridor of human forms sliding into the mist in both directions. 20,000. Maybe more. Who the fuck counts at this point? But here's what the history books won't tell you because they're too busy being polite. These bodies aren't just dead. They're posed, and the positions. A woman. The stake enters between her legs. It exits through her mouth. She's been dead 3 days, and her face is frozen in an expression you'll see in your sleep for the rest of your short, miserable life. Her husband faces her on his own stake. His eyes are gone. Birds. He watched her die for 2 days before the infection took him, their infant. Nursed by its dying mother, the stake through her chest, angled so the child could still reach the breast. Vlad's men held it there, made it feed, made sure the last thing that baby tasted was its mother's milk going cold. Wait, you think that's the worst of it? Between the stakes, on a raised platform, on expensive carpets dragged here specifically for this purpose, a man is eating breakfast, pale skin, green eyes that don't blink enough, black mustache. He breaks bread with his hands and chews slowly while surveying his garden, Vlad Dracula. And when he sees you, when he notices you standing there with your horse panicking and your bladder threatening to empty, he smiles, gestures for you to sit. And you understand in that moment something that rearranges your understanding of what a human being can be. This isn't punishment. This isn't war. This isn't even cruelty in the way you've always understood cruelty. This is someone who has turned human suffering into a goddamn hobby. Cruelty wasn't his method. It was his medium. I need you to understand something before we go further. I'm not going to sanitize this. I'm not going to use clinical language to protect you from what this man did. Because that's how we forget. That's how we let monsters become myths, and myths become Halloween costumes. Vlad Dracula raped his way through history. And I'm using that word deliberately. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, the stake-centered bodies. Oil was used as lubricant, not for mercy but for precision. The angle of insertion was calculated to extend suffering. Vlad stood there, watching, adjusting, critiquing. This was his pornography, this was what got him hard. Edirne, 1442, 2 boys stand before the Sultan. Vlad is 12. His brother Raju is younger, prettier, softer around the eyes. They're hostages. Their father traded them for political breathing room. Imagine knowing that. Imagine being 12 and understanding that your father has sold you to a foreign court, where you have no rights, no protection, no status except belongings. Vlad watches. He watches his brother Radu catch the Sultan's attention, watches the gifts, the private summons, watches Radu learn that survival means becoming whatever powerful men want you to be. The chroniclers are careful with their language. Favor, companionship, close counsel. We all know what that means. Radu bends. Radu submits. Radu becomes the Sultan's favorite by letting his body be used. And Vlad watches his brother being fucked, and something inside him calcifies into something that will never soften again. This is where it starts. This is the origin story no one tells. Not a vampire. Not a monster born. A boy who learned that the world is divided into penetrators and penetrated. Into those who hold the stake and those who receive it, he chose which side he'd be on. Victims become perpetrators because power is the only antidote to humiliation. Vlad is prince now. Finally. After years of exile, betrayal, watching his father murdered and his older brother buried alive, he invites the boyars, the nobles who killed his family, to a feast. Imagine the hall. Torchlight. Roasting meat, wine flowing. The boyars laughing, thinking this boy prince has forgiven them, thinking they've escaped consequence, thinking. He asks them a question. How many princes have you seen reign in your lifetimes? They boast. 20, 30. Some claim to remember 50 rulers come and gone. Vlad nods, thoughtful, appreciative. Then the doors are sealed, and this is where it changes. This is where Vlad announces what kind of ruler he'll be, the old nobles. The ones who've seen 30 princes. They're impaled immediately. But slow. Oiled stakes. Calculated angles. Vlad himself oversees the insertion point. He's learned anatomy during his years in captivity. He knows how to keep a body alive on a stake for days. The younger nobles? Stripped. Every one of them. Wives too. The humiliation is the point. In medieval society, your clothing was your humanity. It signified rank, dignity, personhood. Vlad removes it. He forces them to march naked to Poenari, makes them build his castle with their bare hands. Their clothes rot off completely. Then their skin. They work until they collapse. Then their bodies become part of the foundation. He doesn't just kill his enemies, he unmakes them first. You need to sit with that distinction. Most tyrants kill. Vlad unmade. He destroyed the human before the body. But the women, I told you I wouldn't sanitize this. A mistress claims she's pregnant. To avoid his anger, to gain some softness. She thinks pregnancy might protect her. Vlad has midwives examine her. No pregnancy, his response. Let the world see where I have been. He cuts her open, vagina to sternum, leaves her to die slowly. Make sure others watch. This isn't execution. This is sexual sadism performed as public theatre. A wife complains her husband's shirt is too short. Vlad's response, she's impaled. The husband is forced to marry a peasant girl while his first wife still writhes on the stake. Perhaps this one will make your shirts longer. Foreign noble women visit his court. They refuse to remove their veils, a cultural custom where they're from. Vlad orders his guards to nail the veils to their heads, through fabric, through skin, through skull. As they scream and bleed, he lectures them on proper respect for Wallachian customs. Adulteresses have their vaginas cut out, the flesh displayed publicly. Lazy wives impaled naked in the square. Girls who lose their virginity before marriage, forced to wear their own sexual organs around their necks until the flesh rots and falls off. But none of this, none of it, is random. That's what makes it worse. Every act is calculated. Every victim is chosen. Every method is tailored to maximize specific psychological effects. Vlad isn't running hot. He's not in a rage. He's thought about this. He's planned it. He's probably lying awake at night, designing new configurations of human agony the way an artist sketches compositions. Dr. Catherine Ramsland, she studies serial killers. She notes that Vlad's obsession with penetrative torture strongly suggests a psychosexual fixation. He took whatever was done to him as a hostage, whatever he witnessed done to his brother, and he literalized it. The penetration became his signature, because it reversed the power dynamic. He wasn't the penetrated anymore. He was the penetrator. He held the stake. He chose the angle. He controlled the depth. Wait, let me tell you about the economic terror. Since Bartholomew's Day, Vlad attacks Brasov, the Saxon city. But this isn't conquest. Conquest implies you want something. Territory, resources, strategic advantage. Vlad wants to make a point. He separates the population, old people, burned alive in the church they'd been baptized in, married in, prayed in. Now their tomb, men, impaled by social rank, merchants higher than craftsmen, creating a literal hierarchy of death so that even in their final moments they understand their place. But the women and children, mothers impaled with their babies still at the breast, single stake, through both bodies. Engineered so the child dies slower than the mother, daughters forced to eat the roasted flesh of their mothers. Wives made to consume their husband's severed genitals, and Vlad's innovation. He gives victims choices, impalement or eat your child's heart. Watch your wife violated by stakes, or perform necrophilia with your mother's corpse. These aren't tortures designed to kill. They're designed to annihilate the self before the body dies, to make victims complicit in their own degradation, to destroy the idea that they were ever human at all, because broken people spread better stories. And Vlad understood. Terror is a weapon that multiplies. One survivor tells 100 people what they saw. Those 100 people tell 1,000. Soon armies flee before they've even seen a single stake, because the idea of what Vlad does is worse than any battlefield death. June 1462. Mehmed II, the conqueror, the man who took Constantinople, the man who ended the Byzantine Empire. He's marching on Wallachia with 150,000 soldiers. Vlad has 30,000. This should be the end. Numbers don't lie. Mehmed has crushed better armies with fewer men. But Vlad doesn't fight conventionally. He's not interested in winning in any way Mehmed understands winning. He poisons the wells, burns the crops. The Ottoman army marches through a wasteland, thirsty, hungry, exhausted. Then they crest the final hill before Targoviste, and 150,000 men stop walking. 20,000 Ottoman prisoners, former soldiers, captured civilians. impaled in concentric circles stretching across 1 square mile, arranged by rank, pashas on golden stakes, janissaries on silver, common soldiers on wood, at the centre, highest stake, wearing full Ottoman court dress, Hamza Pasha, Mehmed's closest friend, his favourite general, impaled with his own ceremonial sword entering through his anus, exiting through his shoulder. The sexual violence is theatrical. Turkish women from frontier settlements impaled naked, pornographic positions. Their bodies arranged to be seen from every angle. Male soldiers castrated, their genitals stuffed in their mouths before impalement. Children impaled on their parents' stakes. Families dying together in obscene tableaus designed for maximum psychological impact. Mehmed, the man who walked through conquered Constantinople without emotion. Mehmed vomits. He looks at this square mile of orchestrated death and understands something fundamental. He cannot defeat this man, not because Vlad has more soldiers or better weapons, because Vlad is willing to go places Mehmed is not. Vlad has no flaw, no limit, no line he won't cross with a running start. Mehmed turns his army around. The conqueror of Constantinople retreats from a principality smaller than some Ottoman provinces, because he's fighting someone who has made human suffering into an art form, so advanced it functions as a weapon of mass psychological destruction. He made horror contagious. That was his real weapon. That night, June 17th, Vlad isn't finished the night attack. He dresses his men in Ottoman uniforms, penetrates the camp, cuts through thousands in the darkness while Ottomans kill Ottomans. Unable to distinguish friend from foe, his target is Mehmed's tent. He nearly succeeds. Gets close enough that Mehmed's personal guards die defending their sultan. The chaos is absolute. Men screaming in Turkish, dying on Wallachian blades. The camp in flames. Horses panicked. Vlad wants to make sure the psychological wound doesn't close. He wants Mehmed lying awake for the rest of his life, knowing that retreating wasn't safety. It was just the pause between horrors. His own allies betray him. King Matthias Corvinus of Hungary takes Vlad's tribute money, doesn't use it against the Turks, and needs a scapegoat. Vlad is arrested. Treason. Convenient 12 years in Visegrad Castle. But this is where the pathology reveals itself as truly incurable. Guards report finding mice impaled on tiny stakes in his cell. Elaborate dioramas of death constructed from insects, when given rats as companions. A common torture. He bribes guards for materials to build miniature stakes. Picture that, a man so consumed by the need to impale that when he has no human victims, he creates microcosms of his garden. He sits in his cell for hours, studying these tiny tableaus of agony, adjusting the angles of insect bodies. The compulsion doesn't diminish with lack of opportunity. It intensifies. He's planning, refining, studying anatomy texts. He bribes guards to bring him. When he finally regains his throne, briefly, violently, he's more efficient than ever. Deaths that once took hours now take days. He's perfected the art of keeping a human body alive while gravity slowly drives the stake deeper. December 1476. Near Bucharest, the exact circumstances are disputed. Who betrayed him? Which ambush? Whether it was Ottomans or his own men who'd finally had enough of the gardens. What matters is the ending. Vlad dies in battle. And the Ottomans, who've been traumatized by this man for decades, they take his head, preserve it in honey, display it on a stake in Constantinople. The impaler finally impaled. His body is allegedly buried at Snagov Monastery. But when the tomb was opened in 1931, animal bones, horse, probably even in death, he's displaced, violated, unmade the way he unmade thousands. Poetic, if you're into that kind of thing. But here's what keeps me awake. Vlad ruled for a total of 7 years. 7 years. In that time, he killed between 40,000 and 100,000 people. In a principality of 500,000, do that math, 1 in 5 people. Maybe more. Entire villages empty. Trade routes abandoned for decades because merchants refused to travel through territory where they might see, well, you know what they might see, but worse. Worse than the bodies. Worse than the economic collapse. Worse than the geopolitical instability. An entire generation of Wallachians grew up having witnessed their parents' sexual torture, having been forced to participate, having eaten what they were forced to eat while stakes still held bodies that were still moving. That trauma doesn't evaporate when the perpetrator dies. It embeds itself in the culture. in the nervous systems of survivors, in the stories told to children who grow up and tell their children. The German pamphlets record that survivors couldn't look at fence posts without panicking. Vegetables on steaks triggered flashbacks. The entire visual landscape of daily life became a trigger because Vlad made the ordinary monstrous. And here's the thing that should really fuck with you. In Romania, Vlad is still a hero to many, the man who stood against the Ottoman Empire, the defender of the homeland. They celebrate the warrior. They ignore the sadist. This isn't unique to Romania. Every culture does this. We sanitize our monsters because we need our historical narratives to make sense. We need to believe that brutality serves some purpose, that the cruelty was necessary, that the ends justified the means. But Vlad's cruelty served no strategic purpose beyond itself. The gardens weren't deterrence. They were recreation. The sexual component wasn't incidental. It was the entire point. And the reason the vampire myth attached itself to Vlad so perfectly isn't because Bram Stoker was a genius, though he was. It's because vampirism is a perfect metaphor for what Vlad actually did: penetration, the draining of life. The sexual undertone, the need to be invited in before you can be destroyed. Stoker read accounts of Vlad and recognized the psychosexual horror. The vampire's bite is a sanitized steak. The seduction mirrors Vlad's psychological manipulation. The creation of new vampires reflects how Vlad made his victims complicit, how broken people break others. The historical Vlad was more terrifying than any vampire. Vampires need to drink blood. Vlad just needed to watch. Modern torturers study his methods, not the impalement. That's impractical now. But the psychology, how to unmake a human being before killing them, how to use sexual humiliation as a tool of state terror, how to create scenes so horrific that they function as weapons. Bosnia, Rwanda, ISIS propaganda videos, cartel executions filmed for distribution, the Kim regime's 3-generation punishment, cultural revolution struggle sessions, lynchings photographed and sold as postcards in the American South. Vlad's signature is everywhere once you learn to recognize it, not the stake, the spectacle, the deliberate arrangement of bodies to send a message that goes beyond words. The fusion of execution with pornography, the understanding that killing isn't enough. You have to destroy identity, dignity, the idea that the victim was ever human. James Gilligan, who studied violence in prisons and wars, writes that Vlad's innovation was understanding that sexual violence doesn't just destroy bodies. It destroys selfhood. You don't just die. You die knowing you've been reduced to meat, to an object, to something that can be posed and displayed and consumed. That's the horror that lingers. That's why we can't stop telling this story, even though we want to, even though we should, because Vlad forces us to confront something unbearable. He wasn't a supernatural monster. He was a human being with unlimited power who chose to use it for maximum suffering. And given the right circumstances, war, fear, dehumanization of the other, any society can produce one. Maybe not on this scale. Maybe not with these methods, but the capacity lives in the structures of power themselves. The Ottoman courts that trained Vlad, the Hungarian courts that educated him, the boyars who enabled him, the populations that celebrated him as a defender against the Turk, they all participated in creating this creature. We want Vlad to be an aberration. He was a product refined to its most horrific potential. Here's the final thing. Vlad Dracula died 548 years ago. His methods didn't. Think about that. When the next garden is planted, wherever it is, whatever form it takes, remember that it started here. With a boy who learned that the world is divided into penetrators and penetrated, who chose his side, who spent his life perfecting the art of making human beings into objects. The throne is always hollow. What fills it is what we allow. If this disturbed you, good. It should. These stories matter now more than ever, not for shock value, but because forgetting produces repetition. Share this. Make other people uncomfortable. Subscribe if you want more unflinching examinations of history's darkest corners. Hit the bell. I don't make these videos because I enjoy this. I make them because someone has to remember. Someone has to look at the garden and refuse to call it art.